Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It truly is one of those things that we don't really want to think about or deal with because there's some risk involved. And let's face it, it's not very exciting, but it's so important. I'm talking about your retirement, planning for your retirement. Doesn't matter if you're younger, if you're older, but especially if you're older, now is go time to make those changes potentially that you need to make sure that you have enough for retirement. Fortunately, a lot of us are working later in life, so we kind of delay the retirement, but it's coming at some point. You're not going to be working. How do we deal with the pension, Social Security? A lot of us are afraid about that. Will there be money left? I'm hearing all different things. That's why we got to go to a certified financial planner. They call him the Moses of finance, and he's back with us. Paul Jervey is on the program. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. And this is one of those things that I kind of I leave to the professionals in terms of financial planning. It's almost an uncomfortable conversation because it's like going to the doctor after you have a test done and you got to get the results. And you're like, yeah, I'm afraid that, maybe it's not good news. Well, maybe it's not good news financially, but either way, those two scenarios, you got to confront them. What are you hearing now from people that let's call it baby boomers, people that essentially born in the 60s, right? What are you hearing in terms of retirement?
So what we're hearing is, and what I'm seeing is that there's a good portion of the baby boomer population that is concerned about running out of money because inflation has just beaten them up, because a lot of them are on fixed income. They're getting their pensions, they're getting Social Security, and they need that additional monthly bump from their portfolio. And they're not sure if they've saved enough. And now the concern is, okay, do I have to go back to work? And so the questions that they have, are there solutions? And then for some of those that are in other generations, what do I need to do specifically to make sure that I don't run into that situation? Because if I'm a 30, 40, year old individual, male or female, I probably am not getting a pension, and I may not even be able to rely on Social Security. So that means the onus is 100% on me too.
When it comes to Social Security, I think it was a friend that said it recently to me that in 10 years, there won't be any left. There won't be any money left. Is that even possible?
It is, man. And it's so disheartening to think about, but the Social Security fund is essentially bankrupt right now. It is being funded with taxpayer dollars. That's essentially how they're doing it. And it's going to be one of the big political agendas, depending on whomever gets in office, determining what's going to happen with it. Because there's thoughts of, do we cut Social Security for new retirees? Do we increase the payroll tax, which essentially, helps fund that and Medicare? I mean, let's face it, our government is running a deficit right now. And so they're trying to figure out how they can make sure that these individuals are still going to be able to get some type of Social Security.
When should you enact Social Security? Let's say you're in your 60s. How do you make that decision? Let's say you're still working.
Yeah.
What should you do?
Well, it's one of the things that I am a firm believer in, and they call me the Moses of finance for a reason. In the Bible, it talks about in Proverbs 15:22 that plans fail for lack of wise counsel, but with many advisors, plans succeed. So I do believe that if you are getting ready to retire and it's not concrete that hey, I've got 8 investment properties that are going to bring in more money than I need, or I'm getting a huge pension or a huge Social Security check, I need to sit down with somebody to identify if, in fact, I can take Social Security at the various ages, such as 62, or full retirement age for a lot of individuals is 66 and 8 months. Or do I wait until age 70? It really depends on your lifestyle and your current financial position, because there's no one size fits all. Yes, you should take it at 62. You really need to sit down with that person and find out, okay, how much money do I need today if I were to retire? How much is my Social Security going to be? And am I thinking about what my healthcare costs are going to be? Am I still paying a mortgage? Do I foresee any other expenses that could come up? Inflation is a big, big thing. And so Social Security does increase with inflation, and they've gotten a lot of adjustments as of late. But for the most part, in history, Social Security doesn't really increase that much with inflation. So it's a tough, tough question to
Mm,
say, should I take it early or should I take it later? Very tough question.
wow. Based on what you just said, that the potential that the government runs out of Social Security, my mind is thinking, grab it as soon as possible. I'm not really sure. Um, but let's do a scenario. Let's say you mentioned 62. Let's say you're 62, you're still working. Um, things are challenging all around. Even if you're renting nowadays,
Yeah.
I'm in the New York area. It is, it's costly, very
Oh,
much
yeah.
more than ever. Um, would it seem reasonable to just take that bump of Social Security? And how long does it typically last? Is it based on, and let's go basics here. Is it based on how long you've been working, how much you put in, all of that?
Yeah. Based on how much you made during your career. You got to have those 40 credit hours. And the essentially, if you decide to take it at 62, you're getting the least amount of Social Security payment that they'll give you. If you wait, then it grows 8% a year all the way up to age 70. And so once you take it, there hasn't been anything written that says that those that are taking it are going to get a reduction in their amount. Those that are scheduled to get a specific amount prior to taking it, there hasn't been anything written that says that if your Social Security is supposed to be X, that you're going to get a reduction. It's mainly going to be a reduction for those individuals that are coming into um, retirement. So, like people maybe in their early 50s that are thinking about it, they could quite possibly see or get some kind of notice that says, hey, your Social Security is going to be reduced from what we've been projecting because of X, Y, and Z. So
Yeah.
it does make sense in some cases. Give you a story. I had a client that was working and she wanted to fully retire by age 70, and she needed a strategy to be able to knock out her mortgage. So I told her, I said, well, listen, you can't take it at 62. And this is a good thing for your listeners, because if you take it early at 62 and you're still trying to work, the Social Security Administration will reduce how much your Social Security check will be because you're still working. If you plan on working, you want to wait until your full retirement age, because at your full retirement age, you can work, earn as much as you want, and get your full Social Security without them reducing it. So with this individual, I told her, let's wait till you turn 66 in 8 months, and then we'll take that Social Security at that point and we'll dump it as an extra principal payment on your mortgage. And so in her case, she would have it paid off by age 72, which, still gives her, a lot of years in retirement, and she's not going to have that payment.
How do you define full retirement age?
They actually give it to you based on your year of birth. So if you go to www.ssa.gov/my account, they will, and you go through all the security questions, they will tell you what your full retirement age is. And that's the age that you can collect Social Security and still work, and they won't reduce it.
Wow. Okay, interesting. SSA.gov, when you say the security questions, let's say you've never logged in before. Are those questions based on you personally?
Yeah. Some might say something along the lines of you owned one of these cars
Okay.
previously. Which one was it?
Gotcha. Yeah, it's almost like even with a credit card or those types of questions. All right, interesting. Um, Final question on that. What is that based on? Your full retirement age. Is it truly based on your work history? How much you put in?
Based on your work history and your year of birth. I can't remember specifically. I want to say it's around like 50. Those that were born in 54 for some reason is popping in my brain, but don't quote me on that because it may be different. But based on your year of birth, your full retirement age may be 65, or it may be 66 in several months.
Gotcha. Wow, good
Yeah.
stuff to know. All right. let's pivot over to pensions. Uh, I
Yeah.
I personally can't relate to that, but a lot of people do. It's so funny. Somebody was telling me on a dating app, a woman actually wrote, "I have a pension, and you should have one too." And she was looking for somebody with a pension. Like this is
Yeah.
totally real. Like really, come on. So yeah,
Yeah.
what can you share with us about that?
So pensions are and were great. They are just like Social Security, guaranteed paychecks for life. That's how I like to coin them. They are guaranteed paychecks for life. The issue is with a lot of pensions is that most people are getting notices from their employer that says, hey, we're freezing the pension. We're not going to add any more money to it, regardless of how much longer you work. And so a lot of the newer employees, the younger employees, won't have the option to be able to get into the pension. And so the reason why a lot of companies, and this is across the board with so many corporations, is because think about it. Steve, if you were a company and you had, I don't know, thousands of employees, and you basically set them up to say, if you work for us for X amount of years, we're going to give you this paycheck for the rest of your life. Well, people are living longer because of medical advances. And
Mm-hmm.
so now you've got this huge liability that's going to be on your balance sheet, on your income statement. So what businesses are attempting to
Wow.
do is shut that off so that they don't have so that they can increase their profit margins. So now it's become for a lot of the younger individuals to basically save all of their money either in their 401ks or IRAs or various investment accounts. But what I will say for your listeners is for those of them that are interested in a pension, but their companies are not creating them, they can then invest into annuities. My belief is when it comes to these annuity type of insurance products, is that they are good for income, not so much for growth, but I mean you can use them for growth, but they're really designed to give you income and to give you a guaranteed paycheck for life.
When you talk about these products, what are they?
Yeah, so an annuity is an insurance contract that an insurance company has developed that says, hey, if you, the consumer, want a certain amount of money, let's say $2,000 a month for as long as you live, based on your age and where interest rates are, they may say, okay, give us $400,000 of your money as a one-time payment. We'll guarantee that we're going to give you and your spouse $2,000 a month, no matter how long you guys live. So it's a way for you to create your own pension.
Wow. And you're a fan of that?
So in certain situations, the clients that I have that are within these types of products basically said to me, Paul, I want a guaranteed paycheck. I don't want to have to worry about what the stock market is doing. When it comes to my money, I just want to know that I'm getting a certain amount of money every single month. Then there's other clients that'll say, you know what, Paul, I feel like I've got enough in my portfolio based on what you're telling me. If you feel as though that you can send me the money that I need and also increase it over time with inflation, then I'm good. So it really depends on the person and the amount of money in your portfolio, if an annuity may make sense and if it may not make sense.
What would be a reasonable amount of money in your portfolio to take some and have it targeted for that?
Yeah. So let's give you an example of a client that I'm thinking about without disclosing their names.
Sure.
So they need $6,000 a month in their retirement. They're getting 3,000 from his pension and about 2,000 or so between their social securities and stuff like that. So they've got a $1,000 deficit. So what we ended up doing was we went to an insurance company and asked the insurance company how much money would we need to give you to get this additional $1,000? Because with $6,000 a month, they're able to cover all their expenses, do what they want to do for the family, take their trips, do everything, and then they could just let their investment portfolio sit there and grow for major purchases, inheritance, whatever they want to do. But their income is covered. So we went to the insurance company, and at that time, they only had to give the insurance company, I think it was 370 some odd $1,000 at that time, one time. and they were in their early 60s, and yeah, around 63, and that $1,000 a month is going to come for as long as they live, even if the insurance company runs out of that 300 some grand that they gave them, it'll last them for as long as they live for both of their lives.
Wow. And what is that called?
That is called, it's a long technical term, but it's called a guaranteed lifetime income annuity. That's what that is called. A guaranteed lifetime income annuity. It's basically a way for you to get a guaranteed paycheck for life. And the way that I set them up was I said, okay, let's see what we need to do to cover your needs, but then we also need to make sure that we have money set aside for your wants. And so in their case, their needs are covered. Their wants can generate their play check. So we've got dividend paying
Uh,
stocks, bond interest, and stuff like that I'm sending them each month. That's their play money.
Play check. I love that.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before. That's great. Uh, Final thought on that whole situation. Now you take that 300K. That's it. You're kissing it goodbye. You're
Isn't it
never.
goodbye?
I don't want to say you're never going to see it again because you are, but in smaller chunks.
Yep.
How much growth is there? I mean, I could just take 300,000 and pay myself, $1,000 a month, or whatever the amount is.
Mhm.
What is the growth benefit of doing that?
So what'll end up happening and with these annuities, there is a definite growth component and it's based on the interest rate environment. So because like right now we're in a very high interest rate environment, if you take that same couple in this environment, they may not have to kick out 300 grand. They may end up having to kick out somewhere in the 200 range, maybe even less than that. But in that particular case, interest rates were at all-time low. So there was not a whole lot of growth in that particular program that they did. But what it did was it solved a psychological need. And the need was I'm used to getting a paycheck every other week. With this structure, I can still get my paycheck every other week and I still am able to live my life the way that I want.
So I'm far from the financial guy, but if we were to take 300,000
Yep.
and the amount of, and go with today's interest rates, just complete ballpark hypothetical, just for
Mhm.
illustrative purposes only, that $300,000, what would the amount of that actually be worth if you looked at what they're giving you? It's spread out over your literally the
Yeah.
rest of your life, but what would that look like if in terms of what the growth is?
So if we ended up taking, and I'm actually pulling up a calculator while we're chatting here.
Sure.
So let's just say we ended up doing that and we started it. Let's say we started tomorrow and we've got somebody who was born in the 60s. Let's just take a couple and we'll do that there. And if they put in 300 grand, that would basically give them 1,549 every single month in today's environment for the rest of their life, which would basically equate to a little over 18,000 a year. So let's go. So that's about $18,588. And let's just say they live for another 35 years in retirement. That's $650,000 that they got paid out on that 300.
So essentially, you more than doubled your money.
Yep.
Wow. Interesting. Huh. I guess the insurance company is banking on the fact that you don't live long.
Exactly right. Now, if they in this case, and this may be good for the listeners as well, let's say, God forbid, because this has happened to me with some clients. Let's say they both pass away a couple years into starting this annuity, then their beneficiaries would be able to get whatever wasn't used up out of
Oh,
that 300,000.
all right, fair enough. That seems very fair.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
I'm going to pivot for a second. We talked about mortgages, uh, rental rates, and all of that.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing now the interest rate is about 6.6%. It came down a little bit. you know, nothing to get excited over. But it came down a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah.
Um, when, in your opinion, would be a good time to buy a house?
I mean, honestly, if you're looking to buy a house, you could buy a house now. The issue is that is the house going to be the size that you want for the amount of money that you're going to be able to kick out? Um, I've had a couple of clients that have actually purchased a home, and it was mainly because they needed to. Family dynamics changed. They just couldn't wait. They had to do it. The planning strategy behind that is that within 2 or 3 years, when rates do drop to a more reasonable amount, we refinance so that they can get a lower rate. But real estate operates very interestingly. So every couple of years, real estate will have an inflation bump. And so let's just hypothetically say, you end up seeing a house 20 years ago that was worth $100,000. Now, 10 years later, it might be worth 150. 10 years later after that, it might be worth 200. Well, a lot of these sellers don't want to have to give up their potential gain that they could get and reset themselves back to what would be considered I guess, a fair real estate price for their property. So these sellers are not going to budge off of their sales price because they want to capture that gain, especially because we're in a high interest rate and high inflation environment where things are increasing and stuff like that. They want to be able to get as much of a bang for their buck as they can. So even though interest rates may drop, for that respective reason, the prices most likely won't drop. So you will be able to get a house for a specific price. The question is that once the interest rates, where the interest rates are now, are you going to be able to get pre-approved for the amount to get the house that you're seeking? If the answer is no, then you want to wait. If you can, then go ahead and get it. Just know that you're going to refinance in a couple years to get a more reasonable payment.
From what I can see, I'm in a suburb outside of New York City, and there's no inventory. I don't know if it's like that around the
It is.
country. Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. And those who are selling are just throwing it up in the wind. Yeah, you know what? If we can get this for it, we'll sell it. And the prices are all jacked up. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day how even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you would drive around neighborhoods and see for sale, for sale, for sale by owner, for sale, for sale. Now, never. It's
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I mean never. It's like rare. And then those situations where you see the sign, you turn your head, and the house is like this big and $500,000. It's just yeah, and now add that to the interest rate. Yeah, challenging times, and then you have rent, which is very high
Going up.
because
Yeah.
because they know they can.
Exactly right. Exactly. And that's what makes it harder for younger generations to save for their retirement and even plan to get that house and all those things. And so it's going to require this generation, the generations after the boomer population, to really do a lot more planning and seek out advisors.
Totally. It's interesting now more than ever. That generation really needs to look at what they're doing because of the dynamics. But then also when you look at the boomer generation, also needs to do the same thing because everything has changed. The
Yeah.
whole everything has changed now. Wow.
Yeah.
Good talk today. We can just keep going. We're out of time. Like there's so
No
many,
problem. No problem.
there's so
Yeah.
many aspects. How do we, I know you have a number of different programs. How do we connect with you? How do we look at those different programs?
Yeah.
And just curious here, if somebody wants to work with you, do they need to use the program or can they just work directly with you?
Yeah, they can just work directly with me. So the program that we talked about in other episodes is really for those individuals who want to do it themselves and maybe aren't in a position where they can use a financial advisor. And so that program helps them get to that level. If individuals want to work with me directly, then they can go to my website, which is www.genesis, WMS, like William Mary Sam.com. So www.genesiswms.com. And you can just submit a meeting request on the website. And one of the team members will send you a questionnaire so that we can get you ready for that first initial meeting.
Got to ask you, why'd you pick that URL?
So the URL actually came because the original name of my firm was Genesis Wealth Management Solutions. And when we went to trademark that, my attorney came back and said, hey, there are 3 other companies that use Genesis at the beginning of their name that don't do financial planning, but are in relation to money in some form or fashion. And basically, they didn't want me to start the name with Genesis. So I had to change it to Jervey Genesis Solutions, which is my last name, and then Genesis. But I just kept the URL because so many clients and so many of our partners were just familiar with it. It was how our emails were structured. So I just kept it that way.
Final question, why Genesis?
God told me. God told me. And when I named it Genesis, it was so crazy that God honored it, because I think I told you, Steve, that when I left my previous company, they sent a letter to all of my clients with my phone number on it, which is something that you just don't do. You don't give away your competitors' information. And all of my clients, 94% of them, transitioned from that company to me within a 3-month period.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's so cool. Firm believer in things happen for a reason. And it looks like they did for you.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Paul, always great having you with us. So much great information. I love the fact that you got a question, you have the answer. It's usually 99% of the time you have the answer. And if you don't, you can get it in a heartbeat. Looking forward next time we get together.
Same here, my friend. Same here.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.